Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim, which means it's also time for them to start jackhammering right outside my window. Can you hear it? It's probably the jackhammer will be louder than my voice. So that is the vanity of life, as we're learning in the book of Ecclesiastes. That's where we are. The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 2 today, verses 1 to 26. I'm glad you're with me. We have just started the book of Ecclesiastes, so please jump in, join in, and each day, Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock, we'll be reading verse by verse, so join us. I love chapter 2 so much. Remember yesterday, chapter 1, I think it's verse 12, the preacher, Kohelet, as he's called in the Hebrew. Some say he was Solomon, but we can't ever know for sure. But anyway, the preacher says he starts this quest for meaning, to find the meaning of life, to figure out what life is all about, right? So he says he tries wisdom first. This is what we were talking about yesterday. He tries wisdom, and then it turns out the more you know, the more you wish you didn't know. That's what he says. Like, it don't help nothing. The more you know about everything, the more you'll wish you didn't know. You know, there's some questions you get the answer and you wish you hadn't asked. You know, so he gives up on wisdom, and in chapter 2, he starts out with pleasure. You know, now, honestly, lots of us, we skipped wisdom from the beginning, went straight to pleasure, because this honestly is where most of us think life is. This is what life's about, right? It's got to be pleasure. Did you read this chapter? Because I think it's amazing. I really think it's amazing. It goes back to how there's nothing new under the sun for me, because I don't think he leaves anything out. I really don't. So he starts out, he says, I started with laughter. I just decided I was going to be happy, and I was going to keep the party going. I was going to be happy, but it turns out I couldn't be happy and stay happy, so I started drinking. Like, I'm not making it up, y'all. That's what it says. Actually, the Hebrew says, I decided to drag my flesh with alcohol. Drag my flesh with wine, I think it says. Drag my flesh. I think that's so interesting. But basically, that's what he says. I couldn't stay happy, so I decided to drink. You know, and then it turns out the more I drank, the dumber I got. You know, I was searching for wisdom and clutching at stupidity. That's what he says, y'all. If anybody's ever drank enough, you know, it just makes you stupid. And this is what he finds out, you know. So, you know, I tried alcohol, and that did not take me anywhere good. And so then I tried it, and then the list goes on. Okay, so but by my list, and I think you'll find the same thing. When he talks about pleasure, he's talking about the good things in life. That's what he says. I'm going to go for the good things in life. And then he begins to move through them in sequence, all right? Laughter, alcohol, homes and gardens, right? We have a whole channel on cable, HGTV, right? And that's all that it's about, homes and gardens, swimming pools, y'all. I mean, the king built himself swimming pools, servants, treasures, wealth, entertainment, sexual adventure. All right? Now, that's his list. He throws work in there. I don't think he missed anything. You know, this goes back to nothing new under the sun, because, like, you know, he was like, 4,000 years ago, and he does all the same stuff we do. Now, I know you're not a queen or a king. You don't probably have the wealth he had, so you're doing all the same things on a budget. But it's the same quest. We're looking for the same things. And honestly, the king says, I tried all this, but, you know, he was way back in BC. He says he tried entertainment, but he never had Netflix. You know, he couldn't imagine the TV on your wall. You know what I'm saying? He couldn't imagine. He said, you know, I tried sexual adventure. I had concubines, you know, but he never ever, you know, saw, you know, my goodness, you know, half of what we see on television. I mean, he couldn't have imagined. I mean, what we have available to us, because our whole culture is still on this quest. Somehow we never learn. We don't ever learn. He goes through this whole thing. He says, all this pleasure. And he finds out, man, it's all meaningless. Remember I talked about my dad, Don Harris, at the Smithsonian, you know, the museum with LP. And Don and LP walked around the Smithsonian 30 minutes, came back out, said, ain't nothing there. All right. Now, this is the theme of Ecclesiastes. He said, I tried laughter and alcohol and homes and gardens and swimming pools and servants and entertainment and sexual adventure. And I'm telling you, ain't nothing there. You know? Like it's the truest thing ever. And you and I know in the back of our minds it's true, but we're still thinking, yeah, but I want those things, you know? If life's going to be meaningless anyway, if we're all going to end up dead, why can't I just be, I like to be rich. If I'm going to be miserable, can I be miserable, rich, and also look good in a bathing suit? That's how we are. It's like we just can't understand that there's nothing there. There's nothing there. So I tried work, he says. I tried work, but ain't nothing there either. I know the lie is that you are what you do. That's what they tell us. You are what you do, but that's a lie, And work, he goes on. It's really pretty amazing. He talks about work, and he talks about how it's, in verse 22, it's just physical and mental exhaustion. That's what he said, man. It's just meaningless. It's physical, mental exhaustion. You go home tired and you can't even sleep because then your brain just goes. Ain't nothing. That's what he says. Days of labor are filled with pain and grief. And then at night, your mind can't rest. Oh my goodness. Like I know this is in the Bible, but this could also be like your diary. This is our whole life. He's just telling us the story of our whole life. There ain't nothing there. So like I say, we just say, well, yeah, okay, but it's going to be miserable anyway. I still want these things. I still want it. Can I just not still have a bottle of wine? Can I not still have a pool? Can I not still have, be sexy? But it comes back to what he says in verse 17. The trouble is, all these things just made me hate life. He says that. I hated life, Tried work, 40% of your life, true, that's a real statistic. 40% of your life you're going to spend at work, and work's miserable for most of us, You work, like let's say you work at the Corvette plant, and your job is to put, the driver's seat, you put the seats in the car, and you're proud of your job, and you're really, really good at it. But the fact of the matter is, you were spending your whole life building a car you'll never drive. You'll never even have one of those cars. And that's what, the preacher says here, man. What's the point in that? At the end of that, you're spending all your life, for things you'll never even enjoy. Like somebody else is going to have the fruit of your labor. This is what he says. We're so far removed from everything that will bring satisfaction. It just made me hate life. I hated work. I hated life. I actually think that's pretty devastating. It really, really is. I decided to compare wisdom and foolishness, he says in verse 12. You ever been in this dilemma? Because you think about the difference between wisdom and foolishness. In other words, they're wise people. They make good choices. Their whole life, they make good choices. They study hard. They do their homework. They take all the right classes, they pick the right major, or they choose the right profession, and they get their 30 minutes of exercise, they do their cardio to keep their heart healthy, they watch their cholesterol, they eat their brain, keep their bowels moving, they do their eye checkup, and they floss and do all these wise things. All these stupid people out there, not doing any of that stuff, and this is what he's saying, they all die anyway. You're going to eat your brain and watch your cholesterol and die of COVID. Or walk out in front of a bus, get hit by a bus. Everybody dies anyway. Gosh, I don't mean to depress you, but there's something about the emptiness of life that you should understand. And that's what Kohelet, that's what the preacher said. I hated life. I hated it. It gets interesting, though, that there at the end of chapter 2, I decided there's nothing better, and none of it's good. All of it's pointless, but there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and find satisfaction in work. And then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. Anything good down here, it has to come from God. That's what he says. And not a lot of point or meaning to any of it, but there are some genuine moments in life that are good, and I recognize those come from God. And who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? Ecclesiastes is the Old Testament. It's not ever going to be the gospel, but by showing us the pointlessness of life, it makes us, anxious to know, so what is the point? If it's not down here, where is it? In other words, if you are the person who says, man, I hate life, I hate my life. If seeking happiness doesn't make you happy, then where is happiness found? And this is what he says, man, it comes from God. And I don't know how anybody can enjoy a minute of it apart from him. You know, so I think if you're in that situation, I mean, I hate life, then you need to hear the truth found in, was it Matthew chapter 6, verse 33? It's a verse that says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. In other words, you don't find your happiness by trying to make yourself happy, by seeking your own happiness. You seek the happiness of God. You seek the things of God. And then all these other things will be added to you. But I'm telling you, you weren't created to find and seek and possess all these things for yourself. You were created for something higher, not life under the sun necessarily, but the message, the meaning, the satisfaction that comes when you aim higher than this life. You know what I'm saying? No, it's just good. I love it so much. Now, Monday morning, chapter 3. If you know any part of a book of Ecclesiastes, you know the beginning of chapter 3. There's a time for everything and a time for every activity under heaven. It's just so good. So chapter 3, we'll pick up there, verses 1 to 22. It's also good. Listen, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you're with me. Stay in the Word. Have a good weekend. If you don't have a church home, Woodburn Baptist Church, 8, 9:30, and 11 in person, or if you must, here on Facebook or YouTube. We would love to have you here with us, worshiping with us. I love you so much. I know I say it all the time. I hope you know I mean it. I really appreciate your friendship in the Word of God. This means a lot to me, so I appreciate your faithfulness. I love you guys. I will see you Monday morning, Lord willing, for 10 with Tim.